Hey, Matthew, can you just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about who you are?
Sure. My name is Matthew Gollub. I live in Northern California. I have been a children's author for 20 plus years, and I became a publisher also. So I'm the publisher of Tortuga Press. I started out publishing with established publishers, and over time, I wanted to do things that were considered a little bit untested, like add audio to my books. And when I tried to convince my New York publishers to do that, the answer was no, we don't do that. We don't know how to do that, and we're not going to do it. And our marketing team is not set up for doing that. So, no. And then I decided to publish myself. And I devoted around 2 years to reading exclusively nonfiction materials. And I joined a bunch of organizations because I realized I knew nothing about business, I knew nothing about publishing. But it turned out to be a good transition for me. So once I became a publisher as well as an author, I realized that having my hands on the controls was beneficial in a lot of ways. I could cut deals with school districts, with literacy programs. I could really sort of fulfill my mission. Language, rhythm, color, life is sort of my creative mantra, and that um, uh, inspires my work as a writer, as a presenter, um, and as a publisher.
How many books have you?
About 20 books. A couple of the books I've done, I'm not the author of. I published them because I really like them, and I just worked as a publisher in that capacity. But most of them I'm the author of. And another thing I've been able to do as a publisher is issue Spanish language editions for a number of my books. Some of my books have come out in Japanese also. I don't handle the Japanese production. I do speak Japanese and I do speak Spanish. And those those bits of background have definitely helped me as a speaker. But when I um, hear from Japanese publishers, hey, we really like this book and we want to issue it in Japanese, then I have to put my publisher's cap on and I have to review their contracts and ask for changes and negotiate with them just like any other publisher. So it's really kept me on my toes and just has fed me a constant diet of things to learn, things to be aware of, things to keep up with. So yeah, very, very stimulating. It can be a bit overwhelming, especially in the early years. I don't recommend that every author become their own publisher. In fact, usually I discourage authors from becoming their own publisher because in my experience, I learned so much from the commercial publishers with whom I started. I think if I didn't do those 5 books with big publishers, I wouldn't have been nearly as well equipped to branch out on my own. Um, but yeah, that that's sort of the story of how things evolved for me.
What inspired you to become a member of Prolific Writer's Life?
Well, I've been writing for a long time and publishing for a long time. Uh, we all know that writing is kind of a solitary uh, activity. I find it all the more solitary when you're also publishing and working on web content and developing content for speaking presentations. So I think I finally got to a point where I just wanted some company. I wanted some people to check in with and maybe have a bit of accountability. It does keep me focused, certainly, for the hour of the writing counts. And a lot of times I feel like I'm jump started because we'll do a writing counts And then I feel inspired to keep going with whatever threads, whatever inspirations came up during the writing session. So I'm just writing well after the writing counts ends. So it works really well for me. It's really all I hoped for when I signed up for Prolific Writer's Life.
Awesome. So words count is maybe one of the most powerful sessions for you?
Yeah, I would say, because it's free formed. We check in with one another, and I think for kind of a social gabby author such as myself, it's just nice to have some camaraderie, to check in with people working in all different genres. You've done an excellent job, Lorraine, assembling writers from careers within writing. Some of them are poets, some of them are ghostwriters, people are writing memoirs, and people are in all different stages of their writing careers. We've got people who are just starting out, trying to find their way to expressing their thoughts, their life story, maybe into a book. And then we've got people who are sort of grizzled veterans like myself, who have all sorts of ideas and all sorts of things we have done, but we want to do more. So our challenge is just staying focused and tapping into some of that enthusiasm, that bubbles up from the new writers.
And so what was your writing life like before joining Prolific Writer's Life?
Well, at different times in my career, I was a part of, say, a children's authors critique group. That worked really well. I had a delightful group with some well-known authors here in Sonoma County, where I live. I'm like 1 hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge in California. We would meet at coffee shops once a month and show one another our manuscripts in progress. And we would select somebody who was not the author of the manuscript to read it. So we would get a chance to hear what it's like when somebody reads our story cold. Do they trip over words? Do the words roll off their tongue? When we write rhyming stories or stories with rhythmic elements, that's key. We want to know how other people will address what we have going on in our heads. And then we would give each other lots of constructive feedback. It was really a great group. Unfortunately, everybody got busy, which I guess is a good thing. People became successful and started to take on obligations to generate more material. Illustrators had deadlines to meet. Writers had proposals to make to their agents, to publishers that they were working with. So yeah, after a while, the group sort of disbanded. And since then, I was working by myself. A lot of times I wouldn't be totally by myself because, as you see behind here, I've got lots of drums. But you see, this is another reason why I have to write by myself, because I might be writing a paragraph and then I'll sit down and boom, 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 until an idea comes to me. And nobody wants that right next door, or worse yet, in the same room while they're trying to generate their ideas. So yeah, I guess my instruments have been sort of my writing partners for a long time. And I have produced a bunch of books with audio, stories set to jazz music and stuff. So it definitely served a purpose, but there's a time to sit quietly and seriously and reflect and to write. So that's what I really appreciate about Prolific Writer's Life.
So what is one of the hardest parts about writing for you, related to either writing, publishing, or marketing? And how does Prolific Writer's Life help with any of that?
Well, I think the hardest part of writing is really rewriting. In fact, writing is like 95% rewriting, especially when we're producing children's books where every word, every phrase, every sentence has to pull its weight, everything is open to review, subject to scrutiny, editorial scrutiny, and test market scrutiny. So I may have 20, 25 drafts of a simple story, that people may assume just kind of flows from my head. But if you look in my computer folders, you'll see Jazz Fly 2, The Jungle Pachanga, Draft 1, Draft 2, Draft 3, all the way up to Draft 23 or whatever. And let's see. So I'm trying to remember your question. I get so excited about this stuff. So the hardest thing a lot of times is just figuring out what can be a good inspiration to the illustrator, and also what can be most engaging for the reader. And then doing it over and over again and adjusting and testing it in front of live audiences, since I visit a lot of schools. I tell students the best part of writing really is having written.
So can you give an example or two of something you've learned from some fellow writers and experts at Prolific Writers Life?
Well, sure. Just the other day, you recommended in passing that I explore the video editing app CapCut, because I think I was complaining that I needed to put together a little video greeting to a speaking client and a group of students with very specific challenges. And I wanted to edit in my old editor video software, which I'm not very good at. And you said, well, maybe CapCut. And I looked into it, and boom, I ended up learning a little bit about it and editing my first video. And a lot of times writers will mention things in passing that either remind me of something I should be doing or give me an idea that I never thought of before. I think it's so important to keep inspiring one another, keep sort of prodding one another to follow up with our blog, follow up with our Facebook page or our LinkedIn. And somebody will share a story about putting together a blog series. Dave, our friend, just came out with a very funny book, and he is on a blog tour or a podcast tour. And I think that's great. I had heard about those things, but I sort of didn't really engage in them myself. So it's great to have this network of people trying different things and hearing about their experience, because even if I don't end up doing a podcast myself in the near future, and I've done them in the past, but just to have that reminder, to hear Dave and his enthusiasm making the rounds from the comfort of his chair, appearing on different people's podcasts, I think, yes, that is modern marketing, and it's fun and funny. And, a guy like Dave Hearn is very funny, very engaging, so it really suits him. We get an idea of what marketing maneuvers, what editorial maneuvers suit us. And I think that's a big part of writing. We want to find what works for us.
How does connecting with other writers through Prolific Writers Life, whether it's writers or these industry experts, so like you said, we are cross-genre. We have a lot of different experts. We never know if somebody's fiction or memoir who's coming next, right? So this cross-pollination that happens between everybody, because like you said, you've been a member of, the Children's Book and Illustrators Association, right?
SCBWI, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, kind of a mouthful. But it's an international group of people who dedicate themselves to picture books, books for children that are a little more advanced, easy chapter books, all the way up through young adult novels.
Yeah, so this is a very genre specific organization. So how do you see some of the like the benefits of prolific writer's life? Now, certainly there are benefits to digging deep into a genre based community, but also what do you see as the benefit of delving into prolific writer's life, which is more of a cross pollination of different genres?
Yeah, well, it's a little more democratic in an organization like Prolific Writers Life. We don't, sometimes if we get too buried in organizations of people like ourselves, we sort of forget what the public is thinking and how non-specialists are likely to respond to what we write. So sometimes just describing something to writers of different backgrounds can be really helpful. It's a little bit like going to a cocktail party and having to talk to strangers and tell them what you do. Yeah, there is that commonality. There's that common appreciation that we're all writers and we all are sort of working within the same large area, but not in the compartmentalized area within it. So yeah, there's definitely a place for the larger network, and there is a place to engage with the specific communities of people with similar training and similar backgrounds.
So what are there any tools or resources with Prolific Writers Life? So there's the people, but then any tools or resources that have come out of Prolific Writers Life that have been useful for you?
Yeah, let's see. Well, I actually found it really helpful just to reserve an hour of Bob Hadia's time to shore up my admittedly modest skills at handling my WordPress sites. I had lots of questions, and it's great to just be able to go to the Prolific Writers Life website, see, well, there's Bob, and first of all, he has free sessions where you can ask him anything, and he invites people to log on and talk WordPress. And then if you want to go deeper into the weeds, you can reserve his time and address your situation in detail. So I've done that a couple of times now and found that really, really useful. I guess it's also refreshing to join a speaker's presentation that I would not normally come across. For instance, on Sunday, Colleen gave a perfectly delightful talk focused on the spirituality of writing and creativity. And I haven't really had much to do with the new age genre where people are constantly talking about the universal energy and sound and how we're all made of stardust, and that feeds into what we're thinking. But I found it really sort of refreshing and just fun. In fact, I ended up writing a bunch of ideas for one of my next children's books based on Colleen's spiritual creativity session with all of us on Sunday.
So what do you think what are the elements that make up Prolific Writers Life that make it different from other writing communities or groups that you've been involved in?
Well, the consistency is a big benefit. There's a Prolific Writers Life activity virtually every day, especially now that we've got this Sunday session. So it's not always at the same time of day, but I understand the hosts all have lives and we're working with people's schedules. But it's great to know that I could, if nothing else, log in for an hour on any given day and get to work and not feel like I'm doing everything alone, and whether I do it now or later or whether I do it today or tomorrow is not that consequential, because we start telling ourselves that when we spend too much time alone, unless we're super disciplined, And I find that, you know, my own interests kind of take me here and there, so I'm not quite as disciplined as I wish I were at times. But yeah, just having that daily opportunity to check in and get to work. Now, sometimes we're focused on blogs or publicity platforms, but there's also the leeway. Once we log in, we really can work on anything writing related, and many of us do that. So I would say the daily routine of it, and also the flexibility and freedom just to write what we're going to write. It's not a critique group. It's different from a critique group because we're not sharing with one another what we write. Although occasionally somebody will share a poem, like Paula Wagner shared a delightful poem with us the other night. It just kind of snapped into place for her during our writing session. And she said, if there's time, I'll read it. It's very short, and we all loved it. So sometimes things like that come up, but the idea is not to write and then share it. The idea is just to write and do what we have to do. And then there will be opportunities to share and try the material out in different circumstances.
Yeah. And I think you hit upon a really important point there, Matthew, where as writers, most of us are creative, and we have like, oh, oh, that's interesting, kind of this, whether it piques our interest, you know, in any way, that's something we might write about. Or in your case, you are not just a writer, you're a performer and a musician, right? So you have another layer on top of your writing, or that is actually goes in sync with it, right?
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes I do, you know, it's not just the drumming that goes through my mind while I'm in the writing stages at times, but just the performance of a piece. A number of books with audio that I've done are set to rhythm and blues music or jazz music. Gobble Quack Moon, I think you're familiar with that one. I wrote it a long time ago, but it continues to be popular among the preschool set, the kindergarten set. Gobble gobble moo, gobble gobble quack, moo quack a quack a moo, just like that. Gobble gobble moo, gobble gobble quack, moo quack a quack a moo, just like gobble gobble moo, moo gobble quack, moo quack a moo, just like, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it goes through my mind as I'm writing, and I'm thinking, okay, how can I have fun with these words? Not just how is somebody going to read them? You know, with my Jazz Fly series, I certainly get into that. The Jazz Fly original appeals to younger audiences because it's very accessible. It's about a fly whose language is jazz, and there's the chorus in this one, za ba za boo za zee za roni, and students, children listening to it, they could be as young as, you know, 2-3 years old, and they start picking up on this every time that chorus comes around. They're ready, za ba za boo za ba zee za roni. And you know, since I'm my own publisher, I can take chances. A typical publisher would create a series of books that all address the same reading level, same maturity level. Since I'm doing my own thing, I could do something a little different. So when Jazz Fly 2 came around, I thought, well, you know, kids are so into hearing the audio from what I've seen, why not throw a few words of Spanish at them? So instead of za, ba, za, doo, za, ba, zee, za, run, we've got chuca, chuca, ting, ay caramba, como llego a la chica pachanga. Stuff like that. So kids who speak Spanish find it delightful. They get it. They're the first ones to get it in their class. And kids who don't know Spanish, they're intrigued. I went on a tour to schools in Hong Kong, and I thought, well, how are these Chinese kids going to react to something like this with a bunch of Spanish sprinkled in? They really loved it. They thought it was really unique, really refreshing, I guess. Jazz Fly 3 goes even further. It's got some French words mixed in. Bonjour, bonjour. Wabazi badu. Mucho gusto, enchanté. Merci beaucoup. Stowaway termites, feeling good, strutted out hiding, chomping wood. They brought their drums, a trumpet too, an old guitar, do, and join the jam. Bum, bum, bonjour, bonjour. Wabazi, bavu. Mucho gusto, enchanté. Merci beaucoup. And the story goes on from there.
In the past 8 months, how is your writing life different that you joined?
Yeah, well, I would say I'm more focused, and I do have several manuscripts going at once, but I've also been more attentive to my social media and more willing to tackle the vagaries of editing apps and WordPress apps and connections, things that normally I just kind of let flow on by because I'm by myself. But when I'm with a group and different people are talking about these things, then it kind of revs up my enthusiasm, my interest, and my sense of confidence. It's like, yeah, that's right. I should be doing that, and I could be doing that. So I think that's, a big part of the magic of belonging to a group where everybody's, working on writing. They're working on promoting their writing in different ways, but we're all there to support one another and offer encouragement and occasionally some really concrete help.
So what would you say to somebody who's thinking about joining Prolific Writers Life?
I would say join. You've got nothing to lose. I think you even offer 2 free weeks. It's really useful to not just say that you want to write something, but to have events on the calendar, times of dedicated concentration where you are expected to log on and be part of this process. So yeah, I would say it's tremendously helpful, and it's such a good value also, even if you get past the introductory couple of weeks. If you consider what it does to enhance your focus and your enthusiasm and your passion for what you're doing, and to bring these daydreams about writing and about producing books to reality, really nice pipeline, really nice bridge to make those dreams real. So go ahead and join. It's and plus we're all pretty friendly.
And what do you like most about being a part of Prolific Writers Life?
Well, I like checking in with the people. We get to know one another. You and I met in person exactly once, but I feel I know you pretty well because we've shared so many sessions online and so many chats, and I've come to appreciate your thoroughness, your focus, and your interest in this whole field. It's contagious. So yeah, feeling the synergy and the enthusiasm of others, and just coming to know one another and feeling that connection on a friendship level too. I'd say those are my favorite things about the network.
What do you hope for your future with as an entrepreneur and your books?
Okay. Well, there are a number of manuscripts that I have been nursing along, and to get them completed and to shore up my online presence. I originally made my website, I think back in 2014. So you constantly have to update things. and stay engaged with social media. Again, left to my own devices, I might ignore large portions of all these activities, which have become really important. So again, being part of a network like Prolific Writers Life is great for me, because I'm constantly reminded that, oh yes, there are these things we could do and these things we should do, and it's actually kind of fun once you start the process, rather than just dreading the process in private. So yeah, I hope to continue writing. And even if I don't publish, even if I start turning more of my stories over to traditional publishers, that's the way I started out, by the way. I started writing for publishers back east in New York, and I was about 5 trade picture books into the process before I started my own press. So I might, depending on the story, leave some projects to the traditional publishers and let them deal with a lot of the nitty-gritty, and I can focus on what I really love to do, which is the writing part and the speaking and presentation parts.
Have you had any breakthroughs since you joined Prolific Writers Life?
Let's see. I think it's been sort of slow and steady, or not even that slow. As far as my speaking work went, this last school year was my busiest since the pandemic. It seems like, schools which had been shuttered for a while to the possibilities of guest speakers suddenly started opening their doors. And once I re-engaged with school presentations, I realized what a thrill it is and what an honor it is to be able to spend time in front of children and teachers. Here's like a whole school of 500-600 kids. They are arranging their day around 3 or 4 of my 45-minute presentations. And then they're going to make time for maybe classroom visits, and maybe an author's lunch and book signing, and all these things are going to go. And then when I share some of these details with members of Prolific Writers Life, I'm sort of reminded at just how special each one of these events are.
And how can people find you? You personally, and also your press.
Well, my website is Matthew Gollub, 2 T's in Matthew. Gollub is Gollub as in boy, .com. There I have information about my books and my speaking. There are videos to check out, all sorts of information for parents and for teachers, lesson plans of my books, stuff like that. You can also find me on Facebook, Matthew Gollub, author, bilingual storyteller, author, storyteller, bilingual presenter. I think that's my handle on Facebook. I do a little bit on LinkedIn. So I could be a lot more active on social media, and hope to be a little more so in the future. But yeah, I would say just Google me. You can look for my books in libraries and schools, across the country. I've been using them for years. Amazon, of course, Barnes & Noble, independent booksellers. I love supporting indie booksellers. So that's a good place to steer people toward. My books are distributed nationally by independent publishing group out of Chicago. They're a big national distributor that kind of specializes in smaller presses. Although most of the presses they work with are much larger than my own. Somehow they decided to work with me, and I'm very happy because they've taken a load of administrative work off my hands. So the books are available nationally, and I'm just a few clicks away.
And what about Tortuga?
Tortuga Press also has a website. It's Tortuga means turtle in Spanish. I remember when I chose that name, I was giving myself permission to move slowly, because I told you I don't have a background in business or in software or any of that. so I knew I would have a lot to learn. And there was something comforting about the idea of a turtle just kind of plodding along slowly, and making its way. I like saying turtle in Spanish because I do speak Spanish. I present in Spanish, and tortuga is a Spanish word, yet it's easy to read and easy to pronounce for non-Spanish speakers. A funny story about the logo. Tortuga Press shows a turtle, a very cute cartoon of a turtle standing upright, tapping on a drum, a hand drum, with its front. Do turtles have paws or front feet? And my sister, who is an artist, ended up drawing that logo for me. And I worked with her the way I would work with many illustrators. Can you change the angle of its head? Can we give him a couple of rolls of fat in the back of his neck to make him look more roly-poly? I love the smile. I really love the eyes. Can you do this? Can you make his drum a little more decorative? So we got through about 20 drafts of this logo. And my sister, she's a fine artist. She's not a commercial artist. So she's not used to all this instruction and feedback and feedback and feedback. So she was really at wit's end. Finally, she hands me the logo. She says, use this or I'm going to kick your ass. So I guess, she's my older sister. And that's how she can speak to me.
Oh my gosh, that's a good story. Okay.
Another thing I really like about Prolific Writer's Life is just the diversity of backgrounds that you see when you log in to write with people. Nadi speaks Spanish, Keiko speaks Spanish, Dina speaks Spanish, I speak Spanish, although it's not my first language, and I publish in Spanish. This is an example of one of my children's books that came out in Spanish, and it's about a healer in Oaxaca, Mexico. Había una vez un curandero que vivía solo en un pueblito situado en el alto de las montañas. There once was a healer who lived alone in a village high in the mountains. So it's great knowing that there are people who will understand what I'm putting together, even if it's in Spanish. And yeah, nice to have that sort of diversity among the cheering section of everybody who joins us at Prolific Writers Live.